Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling. We're going down to Ames, Iowa, where this guy was a four-time All-American for Iowa State. And maybe the toughest weight class ever, 126 pounds. Now he is still in Ames, Iowa. He is a police officer for Iowa State University. It's Dwight Hinson. How are you, Dwight?
How you doing, Kyle? What's going on, buddy?
Good to see you, man. Hey, just let's talk about your mom. She just passed away at 68 years old, had Alzheimer's. What did she mean to your life? And as you think about your wrestling career, what kind of things did she do for you?
She was my rock. She was, as well as everybody else's rock in our family. Me being the oldest, I was able to see everything with her, experience a lot with her, and remember just about anything and everything she taught us. She was definitely a rock. She was our queen. She was our queen.
What kind of mom was she at your wrestling events?
My mom was the quiet type. She gave a lot of support at home. If you didn't give your best, she'll let you know. She wasn't the type to be rah-rah, but you can definitely hear mom in the crowd. Because she would say, let's go, Dwight, let's go, Dwight. But, she wasn't really the rah-rah type. She was real quiet. She had a quiet strength. And she meant a lot to us. But, as she was never athletic, she was a very academic type, but she supported everything we did.
Did she know about wrestling when you got into it, or did she have to come along with you?
Man, like I said, I was the oldest in my household, so we went through the learning process together.
And then how did you find wrestling?
Oh, the whole story behind that is I was a military brat. Family's in the military, so we moved around throughout the state. We came from Virginia once my dad got back from Korea, and we moved to Oklahoma, and this was probably 89, 90. Around that time, I was probably in the 8th grade. During that time, before that, didn't know about wrestling, didn't know a whole lot about wrestling, knew about basketball, track and field, football, that's all the stuff we played really. Didn't know about wrestling until I got to Lawton, Oklahoma, which ended up being a blessing, and I ended up falling into the hotbed during our time of wrestling and meeting a lot of people that were doing it. I told my mother, hey, I want to try this out. I got a lot of friends that are doing it. I want to try it out. She's like, well, go ahead, but she was always supportive of what we did.
What was that like growing up in Oklahoma? As you mentioned, a hotbed, and you started getting good. Did you start taking to it right away?
You know what? Here's my connection with it. Before Oklahoma, me and my grandfather, bless his soul, we used to watch a lot of wrestling, and it wasn't college wrestling. It was the fake pro wrestling. We were always into it. And me and my brothers would always mess around, grab each other by the neck, slam each other. And we had some athletic ability. And so it gravitated to me. I love doing it. And it showcased your athletic talents.
When you wrestled in Oklahoma and you got that credit for being a good wrestler, did you like the feeling you got from wrestling and winning in wrestling?
I did. I love to win, but it was the whole journey of competition. I like the whole premise of the one-on-one. 2 men enter, 1 man leave type mentality. I love it. It's the gladiator type. I've always been a fan of it. And what better way to showcase it but in wrestling?
When did you know you were starting to really click and get good at it?
It probably would have been my 9th grade year, and this would have been my 2nd year. And I ended up getting like 2nd in state that year for junior high state. Coach Ellis Holt, he was my coach all through junior high and high school. And I think we went to a couple of freestyle tournaments during the summer, and I was beating kids that were like nationally ranked. I really didn't know and care for who I was wrestling. I just like being out there. Now these days people get caught up in the hoopla, who's who and all that. And there wasn't a lot of that back then. It was just like, hey, coach is like, hey, this kid's good. I'm like, well, okay, I'm stepping on the mat. Let's wrestle. We'll figure it out. And that's what we did.
So during that time when you are getting good, were you kind of naive to who was good out there? You just focused on yourself?
Focused on myself, but I think just a bunch of group and my friends, they were pretty tough too. They were pretty tough in a great group that we were coming up with at Central Junior High. And that was the feeder program for a guy by the name of Joe Zespan. He used to wrestle at Iowa State University, fellow Fort Dodger. And I learned about him later on in my career, going up through junior high and high school, because we were actually in the feeder program for Lawton High, where he was actually the head coach then. So a lot of those guys had went through prior training before I came, and they just showed me the ropes. I got to be around a lot of tough guys in that room, and expectations were high. Expectations were high. If you wanted to be in there, you got to be tough, and I just followed their lead.
When you're from Oklahoma, the expectation is you stay in Oklahoma. You went to Iowa State. How did Bobby Douglas get you there?
Oh, wow. So here's the connection with that. During my time as a high school wrestler, I got to know a lot of coaches throughout the state of Oklahoma. I was on a bunch of national teams for, the cadet and juniors. And one of the coaches that was very pivotal in my decision was a coach by the name of Mickey Martin. And Mickey Martin was a national champion at Oklahoma. He was very good friends with Bobby Douglas. They actually wrestled each other in the finals at NCAAs, in which Mickey Martin won. He's a Hall of Famer. And he told me all about Bobby. He said, hey, Bobby's the man. He loves him like a brother. He said, if any place you want to go, it's always good to be home, Okie State. Of course, they were trying to recruit me as well. But he said, hey, Bobby is the man you want. He raises and teaches good athletes to become good civilians later on in life. And he'll graduate you, He'll graduate you. You're going to walk out of there with a degree. And I kind of floated towards Bobby. I followed him at Arizona State. Arizona State was definitely a choice for me. And then I found out he was leaving. And then I got the word through him that he was leaving. And I said, okay, where are you going? He's like, Iowa State. And I was like, oh, that's the hotbed itself. Why not? And during that time, I can think it was me and Jeff McGinnis kind of met up during I had a couple of tournaments. And I was like, man, I want to wrestle this kid again. I love wrestling this kid. He brought out the best in me. And come to find out he was a Hawkeye. And I was like, well, looks like I'm going to Iowa State. Be a little bit better to your competition,
What is it about Bobby Douglas? Chris Bono has told some great stories about just being at tournaments, and Bobby just opted to just leave and left Chris on his own, and he felt like it was a good thing. What is it about Bobby Douglas and his coaching style that gets you good so fast?
Life lessons and great teaching moments. Because all in all, you step into college, you're a grown-ass man. You're expected to do this and that, and you need to be responsible for your own actions. He is the head coach, but of course, he's not always going to be in your corner. So in that sense, it teaches you responsibility. And like I said, Bobby's the guru, man. Love him to death, love him like a father, and he's always been there.
Do you get to see him much anymore?
Yeah, I mean, he's still around here in Ames. He's very much on retirement mode, and because of this whole COVID thing, we try not to have interaction. I don't want to affect anybody's health. He's over 60, so you got to watch out for people like that. No offense, but you definitely got to watch out for people's health now. It's a interesting time. Yes, I see him a lot though, but yeah, you definitely got to watch your distance. He's doing well.
We mentioned that you were a four-time All-American in a loaded weight class, where there's Jeff McGinnis, Mike Mena, Eric Guerrero, Eric Jatan. You can go down the line. You wrestled them all. You beat them all. When I think of you too, you had a lot of fun when you had wins, and I think wrestling could use a little bit more of that. Was that something consciously you did when you won, that you wanted to just have fun and live in the moment?
I think, during that time, there was a lot going on, especially the weight changes. And for me, it was always about serious business first 2 years. And then they changed the weight classes. Of course, with the weight classes, you get comfortable and your weight goes up too. So there were some times when I had issues with my weight and I wasn't feeling it. And there might've been some kind, at one point there was burnout. And you have to find a way to, just change your behavior to the climate. And that's kind of what everybody's going through right now. It got me out of my comfort zone a little bit. But at one point it was a burnout. I got tired of it, losing weight and all that. But that's what kept me on track. So I had to find other ways just to love it a little bit more. Some people might call it showboating, but I think that's what you got to do to balance it out a little bit. Because in wrestling, you got that warrior mentality and you're going to be visiting dark places in your mind. And at the same time, you got to have that light side just to balance it out. You're still human at the end of the day. When you step off the mat, you shake hands, win or lose, you're still going home as Dwight, who chose the sport. You chose the sport at the end of the day, so you got to make it yours.
And we got to go back. This is a special time because Iowa Public Television was the premier outlet. So we had all of that, and it was commercial free so that you could track people, and you were part of those great dual meets between Iowa and, of course, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. But with thinking back to that, there wasn't Big Ten Network. There wasn't outlets to be able to be on TV, and you had the outlet. Did you enjoy those moments when you got on TV?
That was my main, that led me up to coming to Iowa State because I knew it would be on TV. Oklahoma was hard because we didn't have much on TV as far as wrestling. There was a bunch of football that would be televised, but it didn't cater to wrestling a lot. I knew that, especially when I took my recruiting trip here, I knew IPTV was here. They love wrestling. They cater to wrestling. And I said, what other way to get yourself out there and see, let the people know what kind of talent you got. So I love it, especially now, track wrestling, pro wrestling, whatever. It's awesome for these kids to have because it's a resource and they can tap into it. I love it. That's the only way you can keep the sport alive, honestly, is to let other people see your talent.
Describe the Iowa State rivalry, what it's like to be in it.
Oh, awesome feeling. Win or lose, awesome feeling. I think some of the greatest moments, of course, were being in Hilton. But whenever I got a win in Carver Hawkeye Arena, or whenever I won in Hawkeye Carver Arena, it was a joy. It was a joy because, everybody there loved wrestling. Mm-hmm. No question to it. Everybody loved wrestling, and you feel a sense of appreciation when you walk into either building, whether it's a tournament or a duel. Everybody appreciates wrestling,
We listed off listed off some of the guys you competed against. Who's the toughest guy you wrestled?
Man, they all had their strengths. Man, I want to say the toughest guy, man, was probably McGinnis because, it'd be close matches. I would take him down. We would go back and forth, but at the end, he would get that riding time. He would just squeak it out on me, and he was great at that because he was so flexible, and he had some strength, which is uncanny. And I think it has something to do with the flexibility. Like I said, flexibility is strength. He had a lot of that. He'll wiggle his way out of anything. But what got me in the end, especially against him, and he was a crafty wrestler. He was smart. But what helped him out was his ability to ride. And there was times when he just rode me. He rode me and found ways to just hang on, leech on. He was great for that. That's what he did. That was his bread and butter for sure.
How do you deal with that when you're in a weight class that is really deep and you got to beat all those guys? Does that weigh on you as a wrestler?
It's just, it's anybody's game when you have such a talented pool like we did at that weight class. And you just have to learn to find other ways to beat that individual because they're watching tape on you. And oftentimes, again, you have to come out your bubble a little bit. Put yourself in situations you normally would not, just to play that head game with them. So yeah, it definitely weighed on you, but you knew who you had in front of you. It was no surprise, you know.
How do you like living in Ames? You're still there.
Yeah, I love Ames. I'm comfortable here. You know, it's where else can you be where you can have a steady job, get off of work, you get with your family. You know, a couple hours later, you go to a kids club, you know, and enjoy what you do. You know, that's kind of how you want to build your life, kind of, you know, being able to work, have fun, family, friends, doing what you love. It's awesome.
How do you impart wrestling into your kids? Because I know you've had some success there with your kids wrestling, and of course, you said you're a youth coach. How do you approach the sport as a father and as a youth coach?
It's been a challenge because I do have he's 13 now, so but he's grown up in the sport, and I guess every day I'm teaching myself lessons because, you know, my parents didn't know about the sport. I got into it late. And I think I just reflect on how they raised me and say, hey, just go out there and have fun. But knowing that I know the sport and I'm educated in the sport, sometimes I do put a little pressure on them. And I got to be careful with that because that burnout rate is hard. That burnout rate is hard, you know, so you got to know how hard to push your kids. You got to know when to wean back a little bit as far as being a coach, be more of a dad, and be, you know, just more encouraging. Hey, keep your head up. You'll get to it. But yeah, we do have knockheads every now and then. And there's times when I got to be dad and when I got to be coach. So there's a fine line there, you know, and with my kids, I tell them, I say, hey, I don't get too much into the yelling because as we're getting older, I don't want to give myself an aneurysm, a heart attack. And I get these palpitations every time my son wrestles, man, because, you know, I want him to win. Everybody wants their son to win. Everybody wants their kids to win. You know, it's not my son, my club kids, you know, but it's definitely a life sport.
So every time, no matter what, even if you know your son's gonna win, your heart races a little bit.
All the time, man. You know, I want to say he's a different wrestler than I am, but oftentimes he'll squeak some out. You know, he'll squeak them out just like I did. You know, so it kind of puts me on the edge a little bit too. You know, hey, you got to work on this. Let's open it up a little bit more. But you know, he's a smart kid, crafty wrestler, and I just hope he sticks with it. You know, so I want to make sure he does, and we're going to make it keep it a good environment for him.
Does he love it then? Do you think he's in love with wrestling?
I think he does. You know, he'll sneak around and look at some basketball videos every now and then, but I think he loves the sport. Yeah.
When you go to Iowa State meets now, do you like what the direction it's going? Seems like it's on the upswing.
I think so. So during my time with Iowa State, you know, I've been there through Bobby, been there through Kale, Kevin Jackson, and now Dresser, and it's getting there. I think what Dresser is doing is great. He's definitely trying to unite a lot of the ISU alumni because for some time it was choppy and really divided, you know, and everybody had their favorite coach, you know, and really weren't buying into whoever was coaching during that time. So he's trying to, you know, do the right thing and unite us. He's doing a lot of great things, and we're getting there, man. We're gonna be fighting here shortly. So I'm excited. I'm excited for ISU.
Give us your take on what's going on right now. Of course, you are aware of the George Floyd situation and you're in law enforcement. Give us your take on all of this.
So I've been watching this for a while. I mean, we've had plenty of examples in the news, plenty of incidents in the news where it comes down to this. Your response reflects how you are trained. And this goes for everything, sports, life, and what's going on with police and civilians. A lot of that could have been avoided, I think. But then I put myself in that situation. I'm like, man, you know, you're a human being too, and you never know how you're going to react. But I think it goes back to how you were trained. there's a lot of cases where you look at it like, man, I probably wouldn't have did that. I probably would have did it another way. But it goes back to training and also knowing your people, knowing your community. Us officers, we do carry somewhat of machismo or ego because we wear that badge, but we have to understand that we're people that hold the badge up, and we can't always hide behind it, in which we do. We're people first. We got to let our community know that. And we're civil servants, what it comes down to. There's a couple incidents where officers were in the right, a couple incidents where officers were in the wrong. But I think it all goes back, just like with everything, is how you respond. Some were right and definitely some were wrong. So
take us through what you said there, because that's really interesting when you say it's the training, which it is, because it really does apply to wrestling, because that's the same thing. When you get on the mat, it's all about your training coming out to the forefront. But how do you prepare yourself for those moments? Because they are split second, and in law enforcement, a lot of times you can't prepare for what's going to come your way, can you?
Exactly. I mean, every day we put on a uniform, we're representing our department, and we want to come back and see our families in a safe manner. Without incident. I always tell the kids, I said, sometimes it's 95% boredom and the rest 5% is just going to hit you whenever. And you just got to be ready for it. It's hard to stay up all the time. And just like, in wrestling, you never know who you're going to get, unless you train for it. And it all goes back to training. But with the training itself, there's a lot of departments. I can't speak for all, but if you get into any type of physical training, you got HR looking out, well, we don't want anybody getting hurt, or it depends on the people that you got on shift. They may be limited as far as strength power. They don't want anybody getting hurt. They don't want any lawsuits from officers. But it's definitely something we got to have. I think wrestling should be part of your training. If you're going to have contact with anybody, I think it should be part of police training, law enforcement training. Hands down, along with jujitsu, because you're learning locks, different ways to hold people besides just learning chokes. Chokes is getting us in trouble. There's got to be some responsibility behind that.
How do you prepare to respond with dignity and respect, which is the appropriate response?
Just being that civil servant. Get out the car every now and then. Don't sit on your computer waiting for something to happen. Go out there and strike a conversation with somebody on the street. Get to know your community a little bit more. There's lots of those times, it's just their police presence that's, stops a lot of what's going on. Just get out your car, get out your bubble. I say it all the time. Get out there and communicate with people. Show up to community rallies. Show up to city hall meetings, try to understand what the people are feeling, don't take offense to, what they're saying. You just got to have an open ear to it, and oftentimes, with police, we get that alpha mentality and we don't always listen. And we need to do a lot more listening.
We had a really insightful interview with Kevin Jackson, who is now at USA Wrestling, and he just spoke to navigating the wrestling world as an African-American. Have you had any experiences that were less than desirable as you navigated the wrestling world?
As a coach, especially with the youth programs, you see a little bit. There's a little bit of disparities, but like I said, you just got to get out there and talk with certain people, because they might not know you as a certain person, but if you get out there, you conversate with them a little bit more, you get to know people. I've never had anything outrageous happen to me, but, some people are a little standoffish as far as who you are and, you being a black coach and whatnot, and sometimes question your ability. And then the more they get to talking with you, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I understand you. But it's just, some people don't know. It's ignorance. If you don't get out there and talk to people, it's a lot of ignorance. So,
do you enjoy your role as a public servant?
I do. I do. It's challenging, especially in a university setting. Everybody's educated. Everybody thinks they know this and that. And they will challenge, question. And I think that's the main part of being any type of university cop, is that you got to be ready for debate. You got to be ready for debate. You know, most of these kids want to get their education and leave, especially what we do. We have more jurisdiction in the city of Ames just because we're a university. We have labs on the outside in the other counties. So we're able to leave our primary area and travel out and enforce. So, yeah.
And you get to all the meets, don't you?
I do. That's the benefit. I stop in every now and then, especially during the wrestling season. And, ISU may be wrestling at 12, and usually I'm working from 7 to 3. So I'm able to catch a lot of those meets and just step in there and show some presence, but also, just cheer on the Cyclones, let them know I'm there.
I bet you're good with talking to the community and being at meets, and people probably want to talk to you.
Yes. It's a great platform to be on, and I definitely use it. I just let people know, hey, I'm a former Cyclone here. I know what it's like to be a student. I know the area. I've seen it change throughout the years, and I have a feeling, and I know what you guys are going through, especially now in this climate. I said, we're not perfect people. Cops are not perfect people, just like you. We make mistakes. But the one thing is to come up and talk to us. We're approachable. We don't want to be standoffish. We don't want to sit in a vehicle, like I said. You just got to be out there with the people. And we get a lot of that, especially with all the events, football, tailgating. We get enough of that. It's just not all about writing tickets for underage drinking, speeding. When we pull people over, we try to have a conversation with them, because more than likely, we're going to see them again, especially if they're living in the area. Ames is not that big of a town. So you're definitely going to see these kids again.
You spoke to a little bit, but man, I would think wrestling's the ultimate training to be a law enforcement officer.
Yes. I think that's what we're missing. That's what we're missing. When you go through the academy, you're taught, we're police, we rule the streets, that mentality. But yeah, like I said, you got to bring community into it. But wrestling is a big part that we're missing. And I think it will help anybody if you have subject officer factors involved. You got a small officer versus a large suspect. Wrestling will help you big time. It's not all about just striking and hitting with fists. It's all about control. And that's what wrestling is. It's all about controlling a subject or opponent. It teaches a lot as far as the mechanics go. You don't have to be the best athlete. You just got to know how to use your body, use your mechanics, especially in those situations where you got the George Floyd. It's just, you don't need to be on his neck. You got 4 officers on one. Use your body weight. Where's the bar arms? Leg lace. Find a way to detain him instead of being on the neck, because everybody knows when it comes down to whatever you're training, head and neck are lethal areas, and it's sucked in that situation. So.
Well, yeah, you wrestle 126, 133. Has there ever been a situation where someone underestimated you and you showed them not to?
Oh man, we've got a story. Yeah, we had a couple incidents, but one is that we had a kid, large farm kid. He went AWOL from the military, decided to visit his girlfriend at Iowa State, who was staying in one of the dorms, and there was some domestic dispute of some sort. So we get there, he's hiding behind the door, and I have a smaller officer with me, and she happens to be a lieutenant or sergeant. Of course, she's not rehearsed in, just mechanics and contact. I am. So push comes to shove, we start battling with this guy. She's trying to put handcuffs on him. She's flying around. I'm on the other side, and I'm like, hey, we got to find a way to get this guy down. Because one, he's taller than us, and he's stronger than you. So we got to try to neutralize them. So, of course, I cut them at the legs, cut them at the knees, pick them up, take them down, and once they're in the air, what the coach say, once you're on the legs, pick them up. There's no control. They have no control. So we get them down to the mat, the ground, and we cuff them, We start using the bar arms, chicken wings, whatever is needed to get the arm behind the back. And she learned a lot. And, it was a good experience. Nobody got hurt. And, he took him to jail,
What's next for you as far as competitions? I know we're itching to get back, but are you able to get on the mats a little bit?
We're kind of getting a little acclimated to this whole COVID thing. We are at the time, even though the kids, they're itching to get back on that mat, but we're taking our time with this because it's the unknown right now. It's the unknown. So we're taking our time with our club, the CIWC Team Intensity. We're doing like 2 sessions, Monday and Wednesdays, maybe a Thursday. And we'll go like 5 to maybe 6 o'clock, 6:15, small groups of 10 at least. We're doing a lot of running, a lot of strength and conditioning. And then maybe towards the last 30 minutes, we might get on the mat. But we got to make sure that it's individuals, who haven't been around others who have been affected. So we do a lot of screening. We check them at the beginning of practice, check their temperature. We screen them, ask them all kind of questions. But if we're getting on the mat, we make sure that they stay with that particular partner. We try not to change it up, They understand that it's going to be a long road for this whole COVID thing. And we just got to find a way around it, just as long as you stay busy. So, but we're definitely doing a lot of other activities as far as like functional training, being outside a little bit more, lifting up some weights, throwing some tires around, working on staying in the stance, a lot of that basic stuff. So that's never going to go away. So
you feel like that's good to have a African-American presence where African-American kids can look up to you and see that you've done it?
Yeah, I think it helps out a lot. I think in the area where I'm at, in Ames, there's not a lot of them that do it. But I'm definitely trying to recruit a lot more. I'll recruit any kid that wants to try it and do it. I think it helps a lot. Like I said, if you're a good wrestler, you're a good football player, you're good at anything. It teaches you just about anything in sports as far as, balance, learning how to use your body, learning how to hand fight, just being competitive in the situation and during the time. So, yeah.
Okay, and with this, you promised me that you'd do a little dance like you did after you won a match. What, you going to do that for me now?
Oh, I'll give you a little bit. I can do the, side to side, shoulder shrug. I'll give you what you want, man. Whatever genre we're listening to, so.